Welcome, Philadelphia, to another great show of Race on Main. Thanks for joining us. For all of our past episodes, you can go to raceonmain.com, and we have an interesting show because we don't have a guest.
It was a weird one. It was kind of a weird show.
Yeah.
There's no guest.
No
just
guest.
You and me.
Talking about the debate.
Pretty much the whole show.
Yeah. So
kind of got away from us.
Yeah, the moral of the story is Stu and I both think that debate should be handled with yes and no questions. So stay tuned. We have a great show for you. Thanks, everybody. Good morning, Philadelphia, and welcome to another fantastic edition of Race on Main. For those of you who saw last week, I was made fun of for saying a certain tagline week after week, so I'm going to change it up a little bit. Fantastic new edition of Race on Main. For all of our past episodes, please head over to raceonmain.com. You can check out everything from last season. I think there's about 30 episodes for you to catch up on. So welcome. We're looking forward to having you. We have a great show. It's a little bit different. We've done this once before where Stuart and I are going to sit down and talk a little bit about retirement planning. We're going to talk a little bit about the debates that were on last night and some other things that go into it. So Stuart, welcome.
Scott.
We're ready for another good show. We had the debates last night. And,
we did.
So this is going to probably broadcast after that, but...
well, obviously it will because we're taping it after it because the debates were last night.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it will. That
so
is
certainly.
Yeah.
And
we defy physics.
And yet I'm
here
the one
at
who
Race
gets.
on Main.
It's true. We have a time machine.
So no, I meant to say it's probably even after the election.
Yeah, probably after the election.
At this point.
But that being said, it's what Main Street is talking about this morning. So
sure
we're
is.
going to have to give it a go.
Yeah.
You and I might be the only two people in America that didn't sit and watch the whole thing from beginning to end. I caught about the middle 45 minutes. I was at karate, so I was getting my head beaten in. But by the time I got home, I did get to see about the first 45 minutes of it, and it was interesting. I mean, I had joked over the weekend that I kind of hoped that it would devolve into fisticuffs, which it very nearly did. It seemed like Hillary Clinton was. I think she was aggressive in a certain way, and Donald Trump obviously was Donald Trump.
So he's aggressive as well.
Yeah. So but they're the idea that again you have politicians being asked questions that they're supposed to answer. And to me, that's a glorified press conference with another person there. I would have liked to have seen a situation where, the moderator says something like, immigration policy, go.
Right.
And just let them talk, and that's not the case.
I have a better idea for debates. Excuse me. Is that it's all yes and no questions. There's no explanation.
It's like the Warren Buffett method of conducting a meeting. You
right.
can ask any question you want as long as it can be answered with a yes or a no.
That's right. So do you think that we should close up the border? Yes or no? Okay. It's not, let me explain what I think and all that. And I know it's not, things are not that concrete in one direction. Most things do tend to take an explanation.
Although the man's worth $60 billion and he's figured out a way to do it with yes or no, so why not? It might work for everybody else.
You know what? Look, there's smart, we always talk about this, there are smart people out there, so if you're not sure what to do what the smart people do. That might help guide you in whatever pursuit you have. So if that's a way to do it, and he's done obviously very, very well doing things, keeping it very, very simple, then maybe that's not the worst way to do it. Maybe that's a very efficient way of running government. But the problem is business and government are very, very different, so it makes it a little bit more challenging.
That is for true. I thought it was interesting. I know that going into the debate, the Clinton people had asked, the broadcast, it was broadcast, I don't know who had the initial rights because you flick through the channels.
It's on every channel.
Yeah, and what I found also is that around 11 o'clock or around 10 o'clock, it got a lot easier to take when I flipped over to Telemundo. because I
You
couldn't
didn't
understand
understand
anything they were saying.
You're like, they're kind of barking back at each other, but
Yeah.
I don't know about what, so this is kind of fun.
But I thought what was interesting was going into the debate, Secretary Clinton the Clinton camp had wanted the broadcast company to run a crawl at the bottom of the screen with a real-time fact check. And the network would not do that. So apparently what the Clinton camp did was they created a real-time fact check on her website
That was going on at that time.
But the idea that
But that's not the same.
it's not the same because it's not right
It's
there.
her. It's no. But I'm saying it could be.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It wasn't
slanted.
independent,
Right.
right?
It wasn't
right. No,
independent.
that's certainly true. What I think is interesting though is there are 300 million people in the country.
Right.
150 million, 200 million are of voting age, and maybe 60 million of them will actually. Well, this is going to be one of those elections, so maybe 100 million.
Right. Looks
will
like
show
it's
up.
going to be big.
Yeah, but here's my thing. I try to make my decisions based on the issues, and this will get us off on something also, because you and I always talk about how, who the president of the United States is not nearly as important as who the chairman of the Federal Reserve is,
Right.
or the head of the
big
board
banks.
of governors,
Right.
or one of the
I
big
agree.
banks. It's
I
just
agree.
the president is the president. I wonder how many people that are undecided, if there is anybody left in this country that's
Right.
undecided,
It doesn't seem it.
that watches something like that and says,
Right.
she got me.
I think there's probably more of those people than you might think. That there are a lot of people that this election seems very extreme in both directions, in my opinion, from a personality standpoint. So that personality is going to bleed through.
I don't think that needs to be your opinion. I think that's a pretty observable fact in this
Right.
circumstance.
I think so. But I think with that is, I think that there are a lot of people that do not make what I'm going to call a snap decision early on.
Well, I hope not.
Right. Let's wait and see this through. I'm not completely sure where I am. Those people sort of in the middle at some point who don't necessarily completely identify with a party for whatever reason. They might even identify with a different party that's not up there as part of the debate. So as a result, they sort of walk the line for a while until they have some type of sensation or feeling that it should be this versus that, or whatever the case may be.
Well, let me ask you this, though. It's not just the people that walk the line. Do you think that anybody who was firmly in Donald Trump's camp came over to Hillary last night, or that anybody that was in Hillary's camp said, now I see the light?
Not firmly. I think it's all the folks in the middle. It's not anybody who, it would be a rare circumstance. And I think the way that it could evolve, if that were the case, is that there was some fact that was, and I'm going to say a fact like as in it is actually true, like a fact about crime or whatever the case may be, where someone just didn't know what was going on, they had never thought about it, and it is brought to their attention. Hey, the murder rate, which I know was something that they addressed, is at this alarming rate, and it is growing and growing and growing, which I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying if they were talking about that, and at that moment someone says, oh, wait a second, I don't think that person's equipped to handle that, and it hits home with me because I was in Florida when the nightclub issue took place, things like that, and all of a sudden I have this different view on the world as it relates to that particular topic, and so new information comes out, and you have somebody like a diehard jumping from one side to the other. But I think other than something sort of extreme like that, I don't really see that happening. Excuse me, my push in this and in this election, and we've talked about this as much as any, is that I think don't throw away your vote. Vote,
of course.
Of course. But to keep in mind that if you really think that it's already decided in one direction or the other, because a lot of people, and we meet a lot of people who are sort of like frustrated with the process. My vote means nothing kind of thing. You hear that a lot.
Sure.
Is that there are other...
Not so much in Pennsylvania, though, but in other states.
I think around
there
the
are plenty
area.
of people who have that feeling,
There's
no matter
plenty
where
of
they live.
people.
Sure.
That's right. So my understanding is that for any of the, what I'm going to call independent parties, whichever ones that are out there, in order for them to really get any federal funding and be invited to the debates, they need in this general election, or any, they need at least 5% of the vote. So if your thought is that we should have more parties, which I am a firm believer in that, we've talked about this,
Sure.
is that you might want to take a look at some of the alternatives that might fall in line with what your thoughts might be.
Yeah, but what about the argument that people are going to say, and they'll hark back to the 2000 election when if not for Ralph Nader, there would have been no issue with hanging Chads and Florida
Correct.
votes and things like that. It would have, Al Gore would have walked away with the election.
This is not the same vote. Statistically, Donald Trump is long out of this. When you
I
look
think
at
from
this,
an electoral math standpoint,
that's what I mean.
the popular vote we may find to even up, but the problem is that the 3 people in Wyoming that vote for him,
Right.
are not going
Doesn't
to.
matter.
It's not going to add up for
Correct.
the electoral college.
And I read yesterday or the day before that I think statistically 0%, and I think it was from Gallup, of the African American vote is voting for Donald Trump.
I read that. I don't know where I know where I read it, and it's not a political
Right.
magazine. It was actually in Rolling Stone, although they do have some decent political reporting.
Right.
I don't know who they were. I don't know what
I
poll
would
they
have
were
to-
quoting, but I read that also, that he's polling at nationally
Right.
at 0%
Right.
of this large voting bloc.
That's right.
You know.
So even at plus or minus 3 or 6 or whatever it
Yeah.
is, even if he's at some, I don't know how you do a negative, but he's somewhere between 0 and like 5%, based on the factoring.
It's
that goes
it's
into it.
unimagineably low in terms of historical.
You'll never win.
Significance.
At least I think mathematically you're already out.
It would seem that way, but stranger things have happened.
Right.
I mean,
if that's the case, there's all sorts of different reasons why people don't show up to vote on a given day. It could be 100 million, it could be 40 million. There's, it's hard to say. But I think that's why my point is, you're right, that I think that in a vote like this, I think right now, based on the polls, it seems, and I think last night's debate probably helped Hillary Clinton, because I think her big issue, or one of them, was her health. And coming into the debate last night, she looked relatively normal and healthy. It didn't seem.
and
like
at one
there was
point
an
in the
issue.
debate, Donald Trump alluded to her stamina,
Right.
and her response, which is probably playing on the internet over and over
Right.
again, had to do with when Donald Trump has visited 112 countries over a 3-year
Right.
period and
Right.
done all
Come
this
back to me.
this brokering and negotiating and whatnot, or for that matter, has spent 11 straight hours in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Then he can come back to me and talk to me about
Right.
my stamina. What I thought was interesting.
My response to that is, hey, look, I'm beating you. So I must
Scoreboard.
I'm
Check the
out
scoreboard,
hustling you right now. So
Well,
good luck.
here's the thing, though. You watch this debate, and right out of the gate, the Lester Burnham or whatever, the moderator. He said, Lester says to the candidates, look, we'd like you to answer the question specifically. So I'm going to ask you, what is your policy?
Right.
What are you going to do? And you answer, you tell me that. And right out, they don't even
never
make
the case.
They don't even make. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember the politician would at least sort of nod in the general direction of the question,
Right.
and then say what he it was always he
Right.
wanted to say.
Right.
Last night there's just none of that. What is your he asked Hillary Clinton. It was the very first question in the debate, and he asked Hillary Clinton, why are you the better candidate with regard to creating jobs? Okay. Now why are you the better candidate?
Pretty
And
straightforward.
she talked about her job program, which, yeah, I guess that's sort of what we want to hear. But what I wanted to hear is, hey, Hillary, why are you better than him in this area? And then, of course, they threw it over to Donald Trump for a rebuttal, and you got 2+ minutes of hundreds of millions of thousands of trillions of jobs are leaving this country, and we have to stop that.
Right.
Well, I know that. I mean, I don't know that, but I mean, I could,
Seems like that might be the case.
here's my thing, and I'm not being original with this.
That's why I'm saying yes or no.
What are the next 10 words?
Right.
Okay. Millions of jobs are leaving this country, and we have to stop that. Now tell me the next 10 words,
Right.
and I'll vote for you.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
And it never happens.
It becomes a commercial for their agenda.
Yeah.
That's all it ever is. That to me is why I think, look, watch the debates, inform yourself, do the best you can. But the reality of it is you never really find out anything until they're elected, and then they start doing stuff. And then you think, oh, okay, this is what we're headed for.
Yeah,
because
this
is not exactly what I was, told, or I wasn't really told much. So it's hard to say.
So you see this. You see this election then as essentially an opportunity.
I do, an opportunity to bring
increase
in a new party.
Stop with the two biggest kids on the block just swinging at each other.
That's right.
And now
let's hear. So what my understanding is, they need 5% of the vote. They get federal funding. They're invited to the debates, things like that. I think the reason, and this is just my own personal opinion, and I'm sure other people will comment in other ways, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, just one guy's opinion, is that I do think, based on the statistics that I've seen, and reading that about the African American vote the other day, I thought was very, very significant, that I think it's going to end up being a tremendous landslide in favor of Hillary Clinton for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think Donald Trump has enough money, or has, and he's come out of the block so late with.
You mean his campaign?
Well, no, right. We're referring to his campaign.
Of course.
He's doing okay.
Yeah.
His campaign, for whatever reason, obviously not a whole lot, it seems like, of resources there. I'm not 100% sure why. I think that maybe he did a poor job going out and securing that. Maybe it also is somewhat of a reflection on him. I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's also a reflection of his standing within the Republican Party.
That's certainly a big part of it, sure.
That the grassroots
don't want to give
people,
money.
I guess, weren't doing the fundraising that they're supposed to be doing, or that they're capable of doing, and they just didn't go at it full force.
That's all part of it, yeah. So I think that there's a very good chance that it will be and you're hearing it first here, that it's going to be a gigantic landslide in favor of Hillary Clinton. I think that Bill Clinton certainly plays into that as well. He was a president that most people seem to like, regardless of the side.
Yeah, I think so.
And the real extremists seem to at least be able to tolerate. It's hard to not like a president when the economy is so strong. So I think those things all play into it. So as a result, I don't think it's a lost vote if you decide to say, hey, look, I'm going to vote for one of the other parties and see if we can drive another party into the the mix here.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I don't think it would be bad.
I just wonder that we talk about obviously the executive branch and the executive himself is if not the most, clearly the most powerful of the three branches, and you just wonder if Congress could move forward if, rather than there being two parties lined up behind the executive or lined up against the executive, if there was a situation. I often wonder if, from an ideological standpoint, we do everything geographically.
Right.
There's my representative and the people who live in my neighborhood. And I just wonder, because of the way communications are with the social media and our ability to have a constant flow of information, if maybe my tendencies, my sensibilities are not possibly more in line with a rancher who lives in North Dakota than they are with my neighbor who lives next door to me. Obviously my neighbor and I both want the jobs for our region.
Right.
But I just wonder. We seem to be electing presidents on social issues and on ideology.
Right.
And I just wonder if we could, let's elect the president based on ideology, but let's have a House and a Senate that is not yay or nay based on the fact that there's 51 of one party and 49 of another.
Right.
It would be nice if there were 40 of one party, 40 of another party, and 20 guys that were necessary for either one of those two parties to get anything done.
Right. And we've talked about that before. It's interesting. I think that there's a couple of things that maybe you could do. First, I have a couple of ways to maybe make it a little bit better.
Let's hear it.
One, and then we could talk about retirement planning,
Eventually.
like we were going to talk about. So is that one, I think that if you are going to run for any position, you give up your current position. Okay? So you cannot have that. So if I'm McCain as an example, he kept his Senate, and I think Kerry did as well. They kept their Senate seats at the time while they were campaigning and running. I don't think you should be allowed to do that. If you're gonna, and I don't mean like just out of the goodness of your heart, you give it up. I mean you're forced to. If you're gonna make that commitment, you can't have that job because you can't clearly do that job if you're out over here
It's supposed to be a full-time job.
Right. So that's the first thing. I think that it would really, really push, I would hope, better people who really think that they can make a difference, who are really sort of gonna like put their money where their mouth is kind of thing. If you can fall back on, well, if I don't win, I always have my cushy Senate seat. I don't like that. I think that that's the wrong thing to do.
That's fair.
I think that there needs to be, if there could be, and I don't know if there is, some type of like grading system. There's gradings, and there probably is, but it needs to be something that where if you don't live up to a certain standard, we fire you. As a senator.
The standard.
I understand.
There are ways to do that. The standard is usually you have to do something really, really heinous,
right,
in order to meet that standard.
But my standards all relate around job creation. I think there needs to be
that goes back to our lines about how we really don't care who the president is, because if
right.
you think the president creates jobs, you're out of your mind.
Not really. They're not creating jobs. And the part, and I understand that there is a measuring stick. You don't have to re-elect that person. I get that. But I'm saying like midterm, you get a report card in school.
Yeah, but we'd be like one of the European countries from like the latter half of the 20th century that had a new prime minister every 6 weeks. Well, you talk about not getting anything done.
Then no, you're right. There are issues with that, but maybe it puts you, like, for example, you know how you'll have like a preliminary run where you're going to run, and if you are like with the Tour de France, the first person gets to leave first. If the next guy comes in like a minute after them, they got to wait a minute and then they go. Right. So if you haven't scored well, it takes away from your votes moving forward. So even if everybody votes for you, you're already starting below the mark because you're a screw up on some level. There are ways.
The only thing I can tell you is that I forget. Winston Churchill said a thing about democracy. Said something along the lines of like, democracy is the best form of government, and all the rest are tied for the worst form of government, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing, right. Obviously. I'm probably getting it completely wrong, and I'm sure the viewers will write in and tell us. But it had to do with the idea that look, the idea of a democracy is still the best way to go about this. Although,
and I agree with that.
Not if you want to get a lot done. It's the best way to maintain some semblance of freedom for pretty much everybody.
Right.
Okay. But barring the idea of some kind of benign dictatorship, and I truly mean benign, but I don't think in history there's ever been such a thing. When
if you're going to put me in that seat,
someone gets in charge, and suddenly there's
I'm cutting heads
suddenly
off.
they're importing animals, hippopotamus and whatnot from Africa for their compound,
like their personal collection.
Yeah, so it's not but
it doesn't tend to work.
But here's the last thing I want to say about the style of government that we have. When I was in elementary school and we were going to have a holiday party, and Halloween, and we decided, are we going to play bobbing for apples or are we going to play hide and seek? And depending, if more people raised their hands for bobbing for apples, then the whole class bobbed for apples.
Right.
Okay. If even if it was by one vote, then everybody bobbed for apples. And I think we need to get something like that into our democracy, where
it's simple.
If they say, if Congress, and it is Congress, says, to jump on a current issue, if Congress says we're going to build a wall, between here and Mexico, that's the first time that ever happened. I forgot to turn it off.
Somebody is calling in to complain about
probably
what you're
about
saying.
My stupidity. The point is that if Congress says we're going to build a wall, if you voted against building the wall, you got to help build the wall. The majority rules.
Right.
Okay, we got to do what.
It's funny.
I'm not for building a wall.
Yeah.
So. Go ahead.
The interesting part to that is there was a commercial not that long ago for Nextel, the communications company, and they replaced Congress or the Senate, I forget which one, with firefighters. And there's a firefighter at the podium with a gavel.
Right.
And the firefighter who's in charge says, "All right, who wants clean air?" And everyone in the room goes, "I." And he goes, "I," bangs the gavel and goes, "This is the easiest job I've ever had." So he's like, "All right, who's on board for fresh, clean water?" And that's how they describe it. And it needs to be a little bit more like that. And I think, in my own opinion, it really centers around the idea that it should really be dictated around jobs and job creation and everything related to job creation. We need better jobs. We need more of them. We need more manufacturing. We've talked about it a million times, and it goes from there. So I'm going to say just quick couple. We only have a few minutes left.
Yeah, you just got the signal. Apparently, we went on too long, and the assistant director is very upset.
Yeah. So my first thing is we need to, as we start to really sort of fend for ourselves in many ways. Pensions are going away. It's diminishing. It's very hard to manage a pension and keep it going. You have a couple of down years in the market, it can really, really hurt it. You have a lot of people retire all at once, or you have people live a very, very long time, like what we're experiencing with Social Security. Social Security is just another pension. So those things are starting to diminish. So 401k plans from employers are obviously, maybe not obviously, but at this point, probably the most prolific retirement vehicle for people.
Sure.
My message, as always, to everybody is you cannot stick your head in the sand about these things. You might not be super confident with the material at hand. You need to somehow figure out a way to learn a few things about it. You need to be able to get some help, invest in it. There are resources within the four walls of your business. They're required to provide education to you through the financial arms that are helping you. So you need to go get it. It can be uncomfortable for a lot of people because they think it's this overwhelming amount of knowledge that you need. It's this overwhelmingly difficult body of information that they're not going to be able to get through. And for some, that is going to be the case. There's no question about it. But for the vast majority, the middle, they can sit down and understand it and read it, get help with it, and not fear it. That's the big thing.
Absolutely.
So if there's any message in it, you have to, at the very least, take a look at it. So many businesses offer matches to your plan. They do that for a variety of reasons. So you have to see what it's part of your compensation package. And as part of your compensation package, you need to take advantage of it. So as we wrap things up, I just want to say thank you to everybody for watching. Hopefully your side won in the election as you see this after the fact. If you do get to see it ahead of time online, which is always available for you in probably a few days, remember, take a look. I'm not saying to go do it. I'm saying take a look, go educate yourself about looking at a different party. If you think maybe bringing some additional folks to the game might make some sense. So don't forget to check us out at raceonmain.com. Don't forget all your first responders. They are having a very difficult time these days. So keep an eye on those firefighters and police officers and EMS in your neighborhoods. And we'll see you out on Main Street very soon. Thanks, everybody.